The Xerion scout vessel, Emerald Tide, drifted through the void, its bio-luminescent hull pulsing with a slow, rhythmic glow as photosynthetic energy cells drank in the faint starlight. Commander Xerion stood at the observation spire, his emerald-scaled fingers tracing the organic contours of the ship's neural interface. The tendrils of living machinery responded to his touch, unfurling data streams in flickering yellow-green light. Ahead, the human outpost floated, small, unassuming, a mere speck against the vastness of space. The Xerion High Council had deemed it an ideal first target. Humanity was young, fractured, their technology crude by galactic standards. They had no living ships, no symbiotic weaponry, no understanding of the true power that flowed through the veins of the universe. Xerion's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment, filtering the harsh light of the system star. "Probe it," he commanded, his voice a low, resonant hum. Ersek, the ship's chief scientist, extended his bioluminescent tendrils into the command node. The Emerald Tide shuddered as its scanning arrays pulsed outward, waves of photosynthetic energy washing over the human station. Data streamed back in cascading glyphs, primitive alloys, chemical propulsion, fission reactors. Ersek's crest of neural frills twitched in amusement. Ace predicted. Their defenses are negligible. A single plasma lance would reduce them to molten slag. Xerion exhaled through his ventral vents, the sound a soft, organic hiss. Then let us show them the cost of defiance. The Emerald Tide's weapon pods swelled, their surfaces rippling as they charged. A single, searing bolt of yellow-green energy lanced across the void and splashed harmlessly against an unseen barrier. The human station remained untouched. Silence gripped the Xerion bridge. Ersek's frills stiffened. "Impossible. Their energy readings showed no shield capacity!" Xerion's claws dug into the organic console. "Scan again." The second pulse of bioenergy returned different data. The station's outer shell was a decoy. Beneath it, layered in fractal patterns, was something else. Something was alive. Humanity had not built this station. They had just grown it. And now, for the first time in centuries, it was waking up. The Emerald Tide shuddered as its scanners recoiled from the station's true form. Xerion's ventral vents clamped shut, his respiratory sacs tightening as the data cascaded across the pulsing organic displays. The human construct was no mere alloy and circuitry. It was a labyrinth of fractal biology, its architecture woven from strands of engineered tissue and neural filaments. The outer shell had been a ruse, a dead husk masking the living core beneath. Ersek's frills flared in distress, their bioluminescence flickering erratic amber. This is not their technology. This is xenobiological. Xerion's claws flexed, the tips pressing into the yielding surface of his command pod. The station's energy signature pulsed in time with some unseen rhythm, slow and deep, like the heartbeat of a slumbering leviathan. The realization struck him like a plasma burned. The humans had not just discovered this technology. They had daughters tamed it. "Full retreat," he commanded, his voice a guttural rasp. The Emerald Tide's living engines thrummed in protest as they reversed polarity, their photosynthetic cells flaring emerald as they siphoned energy from the void. But the station reacted faster. Tendrils of silver, black biomass erupted from its surface, unspooling in grotesque elegance, their movements too fluid, too purposeful to be mere mechanics. They lashed outward, not with the crude violence of projectile weapons, but with the predatory grace of something that had learned to hunt. One strand grazed the Xerion vessel's starboard flank, and the ship screamed. Ersek staggered as the feedback shivered through the neural link, his frills seizing in agony. The tendril wasn't attacking the hull. It was as interfacing with it, its filaments threading into the Emerald Tide's organic circuitry like invasive mycelium. The ship's systems convulsed, its bioluminescence strobing panic green. "They're rewriting our systems." Ersek choked. Xerion snarled, slamming a clawed fist into the override node. The ship's defensive protocols activated in a surge of caustic enzymes, dissolving the intruding tendril, but not before it had already transmitted something. A wake-up call. Deep within the station's core, something shifted. A chamber, long dormant, exhaled a breath of cryogenic mist. The glass of its stasis pod fractured, webbing into delicate veins of ice. Inside, a figure stirred. Commander Samantha Jackson opened her eyes. Her first breath was a knife of cold in her lungs. Her second was fire. The station Oz knew her. It remembered, and as the Xerion ship struggled to break free, the humans, those ancient, resilient humans, began to wake. The cryo chamber exhaled its final breath of frost, as the last restraints disengaged with a hiss of ancient hydraulics. Commander Samantha Jackson's bare feet touched the floor, the cold metal searing her skin like a brand. She did not flinch. Around her, the station groaned awake. Lights flickered to life in staggered bursts, casting jagged shadows across the chamber. The walls were lined with dormant pods, their glass frosted over, their occupants still locked in frozen slumber. Only hers had opened, only she had been summoned. The station's AI voice, a relic of human engineering, crackled through the rusted speakers. Hostile contact detected. Security protocol revenant initiated. Samantha's fingers twitched. The neural interface embedded in her spine flared to life, sensing with the station's systems in a rush of data. She saw everything, the Xerion ship, its organic hull pulsing with panic, green bioluminescence, as it struggled against the station's gravitational snares. She saw the alien crew, their spined silhouettes scrambling across the bridge, their fear a tangible thing in the air. And she saw him. The alien commander stood rigid at the helm, his emerald, scaled hands clenched around the ship's neural controls. His crest of spines flared in aggression, but his eyes, those two, large, pupil-less eyes, betrayed something deeper. Samantha's lips curled. The station's defenses were old, but they were hers. The humans of this era had built for war, for survival, for the kind of vengeance that outlasted empires. The Xerion had expected ruins, they had expected corpses. They had not expected Aver. Ursek, the Xerion scientist, stumbled back from the scanner array, his bioluminescent veins flickering erratic yellow. "High Commander, the readings," Serwin snarled. "Speak." Ursek's voice was a whisper of horror. "She's not just awake. She's enhanced." The cryo sleep should have atrophied her muscles. The centuries should have eroded her mind. But the station had done more than preserve her. It had refined her. Her bones were laced with reinforced alloys. Her nerves were threaded with reactive nanofibers. And her mind was sharp. Samantha took a step forward. The station responded in kind, its corridors lighting her path like a funeral procession. Somewhere deep in its core, the reactor pulsed, feeding power to systems long dormant. The Xerion ship's sensors shrieked in alarm. A new energy signature flared across their screens, a weapon, ancient and terrible, powering to life. Serwin's claws dug into the command console. Evasive maneuvers. Now! The station's primary cannon, a relic of human defiance, hummed as it aligned. Its barrel was not metal, not energy, it was something's older. Something that bent the fabric of space itself. Samantha raised her hand. The blast tore through the void. A spear of distorted reality that struck the emerald tide, not with force, but with hunger. The ship's organic hull writhed, its living metal peeling back like flesh before a scalpel. Inside, the Xerion crew screamed. Samantha did not smile. She simply watched and waited for them to learn the same lesson every enemy of humanity eventually did. You do not wake the sleeping wolf. You only give it time to remember its teeth. Section 4. Scavenger Protocols. This emerald tide shuddered as the distortion wave passed through its biomechanical hull. Warning glyphs flared across every surface in pulsing amber, their organic light bleeding through the ship's vascular conduits. Serwin's mandibles clicked in reflexive distress. His ship was wounded. Not just damaged, but violated, The human weapon had not simply pierced their defenses, it had unmade them, leaving jagged gaps where living metal refused to regenerate. Ersek's frill flared in agitation as he analyzed the data. The readings made no sense. The cannon had fired no projectile, released no plasma. It had simply erased. A perfect sphere of the Aztides' starboard flank was gone, as if some cosmic hand had scooped it away. The edges of the wound still shimmered with unnatural resonance, the ship's self-repair systems recoiling from the contamination. This was not war. This was desecration. On the derelict station, Corporal Nathan Sullivan exhaled slowly as the targeting console powered down. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the echo of the weapon's discharge. It had vibrated through the station's bones like a struck gong, resonating in his teeth, his ribs, the metal of his cybernetic augmentations. He could still feel it humming in his blood. Samantha didn't look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on the viewscreen, where the Xerion ship listed awkwardly, its luminous green energy webs flickering erratically. "They'll regroup," she said. Her voice was calm, empty. The voice of a woman who had woken to find her war still waiting for her. Nathan flexed his fingers, the servos in his wrist whirring softly. "They don't know what hit them." A grim shadow passed over Samantha's face. "No, but they'll learn." Aboard this Emerald Tide, Serwin forced himself to release his death grip on the command spire. His claws left deep gouges in the spongy bio-material. The human station was no mere relic, it was of tomb, and they had foolishly pried open its seals. "High Commander," Ersek hissed, his frill now a sickly pale green. "The weapon, it utilizes I's gravitational shear, a technology we theorized was impossible to weaponize without catastrophic backlash." Serwin's secondary eyes narrowed. "Yet the humans did." Ersek's tendrils quivered. "Not just did. They's miniaturized it. That cannon should require a power source the size of a moon. But their station, it's barely a kilometer long. A silence thicker than void, fall settled over the bridge. The implications were monstrous. If humanity had mastered such physics, defying weapons ire before their collapse, what else lay buried in their graveyard of stars? Nathan watched the alien ship through the cracked station viewport. Its organic hull pulsed weakly, like a wounded animal licking its injuries. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the eyes of consortium soldiers when they realized the primitive humans they'd been sent to pacify had turned their own tech against them. And worst of all, curiosity. He turned to Samantha. "They'll be back." She finally looked at him, and the cold fire in her eyes made his augmented spine prickle. "Good." Somewhere in the darkness, the station's ancient reactors groaned back to life. The wolf was awake, and it remembered how to hunt. The Xerion command vessel of Emerald Tides drifted in the debris field like a wounded leviathan, its once pulsing bio-luminescent veins now flickering erratically. Commander Zerwin pressed his three-fingered hand against the organic viewport, feeling the faint vibrations of his ship's pain through the neural, linked membrane. The humans had done this, not with overwhelming force, not with superior numbers, but with efficiency. Ersek's tendrils twitched as he analyzed the aftermath, his bioluminescent nodes dimmed in distress. The human station's reactor signatures were spiking, its ancient systems roaring back to life with a hunger that defied logic. "They should be dead," he murmured, his voice a whisper of disturbed harmonics. Their technology was supposed to be inert. Broken. Serwin's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment, a reflexive gesture of disbelief. The humans had not just survived, they had adapted. Worse, they had remembered. Inside the derelict station, the air tasted of rust and ozone. Nathan exhaled slowly, watching his breath mist in the cold. His neural augments fed him data, structural integrity holding, power conduits rerouting, life support stabilizing. The station wasn't just waking up, it was healing. Samantha stood before the central console, her fingers dancing across the archaic interface, with a familiarity that bordered on reverence. The screen flickered to life, casting her face in pale blue light. Ancient schematics unfolded before her, weapons systems, shield matrices, dormant drones buried in the station's skeletal framework. "They left us more than ruins," she said, her voice low. Nathan didn't need to ask who they were. The ones who had built this place, the ones who had fought and died before the collapse, the ones who had known the war wasn't over, just postponed. A shudder ran through the station's bones. Somewhere deep within its mechanical heart, something stirred. Airsec's bio scanner chimed, its organic tendrils writhing as it processed the new data. His frill flared in alarm. "Commander, the human station. It's not just reactivating, it's evolving." Serwin's claws flexed involuntarily. Evolution was a sacred process to the Xerion, a slow, deliberate unfolding of biological perfection. What the humans were doing was something else. Something as violent. The station's outer hull began to shift, plates of armor sliding aside to reveal hidden weapon ports. Not dormant cannons, but something worse, adaptive systems. The humans hadn't just preserved their technology. They had built it to have learned. Airsec's voice trembled. They're machines. They're rewriting their own protocols. They're as learning from our attacks. Serwin felt the weight of his own arrogance settle in his chest. The Xerion had come to study a dead civilization, to pick through its bones like scholars dissecting an extinct species. But the humans had never been extinct. They had been waiting. Nathan felt the station's pulse through the soles of his boots. It wasn't just power returning, it was awareness. The ancient AI core buried in the station's heart was booting up, its fragmented consciousness knitting itself back together. Samantha's fingers stilled over the console. "It recognizes us." A holographic flicker resolved into a face. Not human, not machine, but something in between. A ghost of the past. "Authorization required," it whispered, its voice a chorus of static and forgotten voices. Samantha didn't hesitate. "Jackson, Samantha, Commander, Terran Defense Initiative, 7th Fleet." The hologram studied her. Then Nathan. "Welcome back, soldiers." The station breathed and the wolves of dead Earth bared their teeth once more. The station moved, not in the sluggish, mechanical way of Xerion bio ships, their vine, like structures flexing with organic deliberation. This was something sharper, something Oz alive, in a way the aliens had never seen. The walls hummed, not with the soft pulse of photosynthetic energy, but with the deep, resonant growl of reactors stirring from centuries of silence. Airsec's frills flared in alarm, his emerald skin paling as his scanner chimed frantically. The power signatures, they're not just reactivating. They're adapting. Serwin's claws flexed against the command console, the smooth mechanical surface yielding slightly under his grip. His people had studied dead civilizations before. They had walked the hollowed out ruins of the Krell, traced the fossilized energy grids of the Ventheri, even pieced together the last moments of the Xtheri from their crumbling databanks. This was no ruin. This was Av tomb that had chosen to wake up. Nathan exhaled, his breath fogging in the suddenly chilled air. The station's atmosphere was stabilizing, cycling out centuries of stagnant decay, replacing it with something crisp and metallic, the scent of a warship preparing for battle. Samantha's fingers danced across the console, her movements precise, instinctive, as if her body remembered protocols her mind had long forgotten. The hologram flickered, its fragmented face resolving further, into something almost human, almost familiar. "Systems at 37% operational capacity," it intoned. "Weapons dormant. Shields nominal. Cryo bay integrity compromised." Nathan's gut tightened. Cryo bay. The hologram's gaze, if something without eyes could gaze, he shifted to him. "You were not the only one sleeping, Corporal Sullivan." Airsec's scanner shrieked. The Xerion scientist stumbled back as the data flooded his display. His people's technology was elegant, grown rather than built, its energy flowing in luminous veins of yellow, green. But what he saw now was brutal. A network of systems so interwoven, so redundantly layered, that even damaged, even half dead, they refused to fail. And beneath it all, buried in the station's deepest vaults, a life science. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. High Commander, Ursek rasped, his voice thin with disbelief. They're not just machines. They're soldiers. Serwin's spines flattened against his skull. The humans hadn't just hidden a station. They had hidden an AV army. Nathan's pulse hammered in his throat as the station's A guided them downward, through corridors that thrummed with returning power. The walls here were different, less metal, more memory. Faded insignias, scorch marks that had never been repaired. Names carved into bulkheads by hands long turned to dust. This wasn't just a relic, it was a graveyard. And its occupants were starting to wake up. The cryo bay doors hissed open, revealing rows upon rows of pods, some dark. Their occupants lost to time, but others flickered with pale blue light. Inside, figures floated, human figures. Samantha's breath caught. Oh God. Nathan's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing, not for comfort, but for as anchoring. For remembering that they were still real, still Oz here, and not just ghosts haunting a dead war. The nearest pod hissed, the glass frosted over, then cleared, and inside, a pair of eyes snapped open. Ursek's scanner shattered in his grip, the readings made no sense. The human in the pod was ancient, centuries old, his body preserved by cryogenics so advanced it bordered on heresy. But his vitals were stronger than they should have been, not degraded, enhanced. Serwin's mandibles clicked in alarm as the pod's seals released with a hydraulic sigh. The human within took his first breath in over 500 years, and it wasn't a gasp. It was a snarl. The man's hand shot out, gripping the edge of the pod, his muscles coiling with a tension that spoke of reflexes honed in war, not sleep. His eyes, sharp, awake, locked onto Samantha, then Nathan. Then the Xerion, his lips peeled back from his teeth, and the station's AI whispered, voice thick with something like reverence. "Fef. Welcome back, Captain Varga." The dead had risen. And they were as passive. Section 7. The Unseen War. The cryo chamber exhaled a final plume of frozen vapor as Captain Varga stepped forward, his bare feet leaving imprints in the frost that crackled against the deck. The Xerion recoiled, not from fear, but from the wrongness of what they were seeing. Ursek's neural frills flared in agitation, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratic yellow, green. This was not a relic, this was a predator. Varga's body was a testament to forgotten wars. Scars mapped his skin like battle diagrams, some old and silvered, others still pink, with the unnatural resilience of cryo-enhanced tissue. His muscles moved with the eerie precision of a machine that had never truly powered down, only waited, and his eyes, they burned. Not with the dull haze of a sleeper roused too soon, but with the focused intensity of a man who had counted every second of his imprisonment. Samantha Jackson took an involuntary step back, her training warring with instinct. She had seen combat, she had faced Xerion boarding parties in the black. But this was something else. Nathan's hand twitched toward his sidearm. Varga's gaze snapped to the movement. A sound escaped him, not a laugh, not a growl, but something between the two. The station's AI flickered across nearby displays, its voice fragmented, reverent. Systems nominal. Neural integrity 98%, combat protocols active. Ursek's translator stuttered as it parsed the last phrase. For combat protocols, the Xerion scientist had studied human cryogenics before. Revival was supposed to be a slow process. The brain needed hours to reorient. The body days to regain full motor function. Varga was already turning, already assessing the room with the predatory efficiency of a wolf dropped into new territory. His nostrils flared, taking in the scent of alien biology, the chlorophyll tang of Xerion blood, the ozone hum of their living tech. Then he spoke. His voice was a blade dragged across stone. Who the hell are you? Serwin's mandibles flexed, his armored carapace clicking as he stepped forward. The commander had faced human defiance before, had broken it. But this was different. This man did not fear them. You are aboard a Xerion research station. Serwin pulsed through his vocal sac, the words thick with electrical resonance. You were lost. We recovered you. Vargas' lips peeled back. Bullshit. Not toward them. Not in attack, to the nearest console. His fingers, calloused, scarred, danced across the interface with terrifying familiarity. The station's systems responded, screens flickering to life, data streams unspooling in human script. Ursek's frills stood rigid. Impossible. The console was Xerion tech. Biomechanical, keyed to their neural patterns. It should have been inert to human touch. Yet it obeyed. Vargas' eyes flickered across the data, his jaw tightening. 500 years, he muttered. Then, quieter, they kept fighting. Samantha found her voice. Captain. He didn't look at her. You got a war on. The question hung in the air like a primed grenade. Zerwind hesitated. The truth was irrelevant. The human would see through lies. Varga exhaled through his nose. Then he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. The station's AI flickered again, its voice warped, almost eager. Weapons cache unlocked. Awaiting authorization. Nathan's grip on his sidearm tightened. What the hell did you just do? Varga finally turned to face them fully. And somewhere deep in the station's organic infrastructure, something woke up. Something old, something hungry. The lights dimmed as power rerouted. The walls shuddering with the groan of long, dormant systems coming online. The Xerion's luminescence flared in alarm, their living tech recoiling, as if sensing a predator in its midst. Ursek's scanner, what remained of it, chirped a frantic warning. The readings were impossible. The human wasn't just awake. He was syncing with the station, and the station was answering. Varga cracked his neck. Let's get to work. The station breathed. That was the only way to describe it. The walls pulsed in slow, rhythmic contractions, the veins of yellow, green bioluminescence flaring brighter before dimming again, like the slow inhale and exhale of some vast, slumbering beast. But it wasn't the Xerion's living architecture responding. It was human. Ursek's remaining scanner spat erratic data streams, its organic interface writhing as it struggled to process what it was seeing. The readings made no sense. The station's core, its neural network, its very consciousness, was rewriting itself. Protocols that had lain dormant for centuries were now awakening, unfurling like the roots of some ancient tree, breaking through frozen soil. And at the center of it all stood Varga. The human's eyes were half-lidded, his expression eerily calm, but his fingers twitched in deliberate patterns. The Xerion had assumed the cryo. Sleep would have left him weakened, his neural pathways sluggish from centuries of suspended animation. They were wrong. The cold had not dulled him. It had phase-honed him. Ursek's fronds trembled as he watched the human interface with the station systems, not through some crude mechanical uplink, but through something far more primal. The station as recognized him. It obeyed. How? Ursek whispered, his voice barely audible over the shuddering hum of awakening machinery. Nathan Sullivan exhaled sharply beside him, his grip tightening on his rifle. Because it's ours. The words sent a ripple of unease through the Xerion. The realization struck Ursek like a plasma round to the chest. This wasn't just some abandoned relic. This was a human station, a warship, a fortress. And Varga wasn't just a survivor, he was its keeper. The lights flickered again, and this time, the shadows moved. Something detached itself from the far wall, a sleek, angular shape that unfolded with predatory grace. It was a drone, but unlike the Xerion's smooth, organic constructs, this machine was all edges and hunger, its matte, black surface drinking in the light. Its single optic pulsed red once, then locked onto the nearest Xerion soldier. The alien barely had time to raise his weapon before the drone moved. It wasn't fast. It was instant. One moment, the soldier stood there, his bioluminescent armor flaring in alarm. The next, he was on the ground, his chest cavity a ruin of splintered chitin and leaking fluids. The drone hovered for a second, its optics scanning the rest of them, then turned not to attack, but to wait, like a hound awaiting its master's command. Varga didn't even glance at the corpse. "You wanted to study us," he said, his voice low, almost conversational. "So let's start with lesson 1. He lifted his hand. The station answered. The walls split open, revealing rows upon rows of dormant war machines, turrets, things the Xerion could even name, their silhouettes sharp and unforgiving. The air filled with the sound of awakening engines, the hum of capacitors charging, the click of targeting systems coming online. Ersek's blood ran cold. This wasn't a station. It was an Oz arsenal, and Varga was its key. The human turned his head slightly, his gaze settling on Zerwind. The alien commander stood rigid, his emerald-hued armor flickering with barely restrained energy, but his spines lay flat against his skull, a sign of submission among his kind. Varga smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Welcome," he said softly, "to the real war." And then the lights went out. In the darkness, something screamed. It wasn't human. Sestion9E last dokiri darkness swallowed the station. For 3 heartbeats there was nothing, just the suffocating void of artificial night, the hum of dormant systems, the scent of ozone and something metallic beneath it. Then the emergency luminescence flickered on, bathing the chamber in pulsing amber. Not the Xerion's clean, photosynthetic glow, but something older. Something's human. Ersek's frills flared, his bioluminescent veins pulsing erratic yellow, green as his pupils dilated. His claws scraped against the organic alloy of the floor, his body instinctively turning toward the last place he'd seen Varga. The human was gone. In his place stood the machines. They unfolded from the walls like nightmares given form, sleek, angular, their armored plating etched with the scars of a war fought centuries ago. Some were drones, hovering on silent anti-grav fields, their weaponized limbs twitching with predatory hunger. Others were heavier, bulkier, their chassis marked with the faded insignia of a long-dead Terran faction. And then there were the others, the ones that moved like living things, their joints too fluid, their targeting arrays too aware. Ersek's breath hitched. This wasn't just forgotten technology. This was doctrine, the last, desperate strategy of a species that had refused to die. Across the chamber, Zerwind hissed, his emerald armor flaring as his combat instincts overrode his shock. His spines lifted, rigid with defiance. But his stance was wrong, too wide, too unsteady. He was a commander bred for fleet engagements, for the elegant dance of starship warfare. This was closey. This was personal. And Varga had designed it that way. A sound cut through the silence, a low, reverberating click, like a rifle priming. The machines turned. Ersek barely had time to register the targeting locks painting his chest before the first shot tore through the air. The Xerion had studied human warfare. They had dissected their tactics, their psychology, their brutal, beautiful efficiency. They had watched from the shadows as humanity clawed its way from the dirt to the stars, marveling at their resilience, even as they dismissed it as desperation. They had been wrong. What unfolded in the station's corridors wasn't battle. It was art. Varga moved like a ghost, his footsteps silent, his presence erased by the station's own systems. He didn't fight, he orchestrated. Every drone, every turret, every dormant war machine answered to him, their movements synchronized with a precision that bordered on telepathy. The Xerion fought back, of course. Their living metal constructs lashed out with whip, like tendrils, their plasma casters spitting corrosive fire. But for every strike that landed, 3 more missed. Because the station itself was shifting, its architecture rearranging in real time, herding them into kill zones they never saw coming. Ersek stumbled into an open chamber, his frills slick with panic sweat. His scanner pulsed frantically, its readings nonsensical. The walls breathed around him, the very structure of the station rejecting his presence. And then he saw it, embedded in the far wall, half hidden behind a tangle of dormant machinery, was a cryopod. Its glass was frosted, its systems dark, but the figure inside was unmistakable. And very, very awake, Varga watched from the shadows as the Xerion scientist approached the pod. He could have stopped him. Some lessons needed to be as seen. The pod hissed open, cold vapor spilled across the floor, swirling around Ursek's feet as the figure inside stirred. Then the human opened his eyes, and Ursek understood. This wasn't just a survivor, this was a message. A warning, carved in flesh and bone, and suspended time. The last doctrine of a species that had learned to sleep through the apocalypse, just so they could wake up as angry. The cryopod exhaled its final breath of frozen air, and the human stepped forward, Ursek's bioluminescent veins dimmed in instinctive retreat. The figure before him was not merely a relic, it was of contradiction. The human's skin should have been withered, his muscles atrophied, his mind lost to the slow erosion of cryogenic stasis. Instead, he stood like a blade pulled from a whetstone. Hungrier. His eyes, pale, like fractured ice, scanned the chamber with the precision of a targeting system. They lingered on the Xerion's trembling hands. The pulsing yellow, green veins beneath his translucent skin, the organic filaments of his scanner, as it stuttered in confusion. Ursek's translator implant struggled to parse the human's first words. Not because the language was unknown, because the voice was wrong. It was too deep, too resonant, as if the cryopod had not preserved his vocal cords, but haunted them, stripping away weakness until only the bare, vibrating truth remained. You woke me. Not a question. An ire accusation. Ursek's mandibles twitched. His species had studied humans for cycles, dissected their wars, their rebellions, their stubborn refusal to die quietly. They had dismissed them as reckless, emotional, fragile. This was not fragile. This was something that had slept through the end of a world, and now stood ready to end another. Behind him, the station's walls pulsed in distress. The organic architecture, usually so fluid, recoiled from the human's presence. Vines of living metal curled away from his boots. Energy webs flickered, their photosynthetic glow dimming, as if starved of light. The human noticed, a smile cut across his face, not cruel, not kind. Calculating. Ursek's scanner finally stabilized, its readings spilling across his vision in frantic glyphs. Muscle density 12% above baseline human maximum, neural activity hyper, synchronized, no degradation. Metabolic rate accelerating. And then, the final line warning cryo, adaptive mutation detected. Ursek's breath caught. The humans hadn't just survived the long sleep. They had evolved in it, somewhere in the shadows. Varga watched. His own pulse was steady, his mind clear. He had known, of course he had known. The Xerion had come to study the past. They had instead awakened the future, and now, the human turned his gaze fully upon Ursek. Tell me, he said, how long I've been asleep. The question was a blade. The answer would be the wound. Ursek hesitated. Then the station screamed. Alarms erupted in bioluminescent flares, the walls shuddering as if in pain. Somewhere deep in the organic core of the outpost, something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. The human didn't flinch. He listened. And then he laughed. It was the sound of a predator recognizing the footsteps of its prey. Hey, he said. They're here. Ursek didn't understand. Not until the first impact rocked the station. Not until the comms erupted with the panicked voices of Xerion soldiers. Not until the human strode past him, his steps too sure, too knowing, and reached for a weapon that hadn't existed when he had last walked among the living. Ursek finally asked the question clawing at his throat. The human didn't look back. My people. And then the walls burned open. And the war began. The station burned. Not with fire, Xerion architecture did not burn in the way humans understood it. Instead, it rotted, its bioluminescent veins blackening as if poisoned, its pulsing yellow-green energy flickering into sickly embers. The walls, once alive with symbiotic machinery, now convulsed in death throes, their vine-like support structures collapsing like withered husks. Arsec stumbled through the chaos, his sensory frills flattened against his skull in primal terror. His mind, honed by centuries of scientific precision, struggled to process the devastation unfolding around him. This was not war, this was erasure. Humanity had not simply attacked, they had unmade. Their weapons did not just pierce the station's defenses, they rewrote them. Viral nanites dissolved organic circuitry mid-pulse. Electromagnetic pulses, tuned to the Xerion's photosynthetic power grids, left entire sectors dark and lifeless. And the soldiers. Arsec's breath hitched as he rounded a shattered growth node. A human stood in the ruins, not the ancient one they had awoken. Clad in armor that seemed to drink the light, its surface shifting between matte black and the faintest reflections of the dying bioluminescence around it. The helmet's visor was a single slit of crimson, unblinking, unfeeling. In its hands, it cradled a weapon Arsec did not recognize, a rifle with no barrel, only a series of coiled filaments that hummed with restrained energy. The human turned its head, Arsec froze. For a heartbeat, nothing happened, then the human moved. Not with the clumsy, inefficient motions the Xerion had observed in their historical records. Not with the slow, predictable kinetics of a lesser species. It moved like liquid shadow. One moment it was standing. The next, it was there, its weapon raised, the filaments along its length pulsing once. Arsec flinched. But the shot never came. Instead, the human's helmet tilted slightly, as if considering him. Then, with deliberate slowness, it lowered the weapon and stepped past him, its boots crushing the brittle remains of a fallen bio-circuit. Arsec exhaled, his body trembling. That was when he heard it. Not from the soldier, not from any comms channel. From everywhere. It echoed through the dying station, a transmission broadcast on every frequency, in every dialect, in a tone that was neither plea nor demand, but something far worse, certainty. Xerion command. The voice was female. Calm, utterly unshaken by the carnage she presided over. This is Commander Samantha Jackson of the Terran Vanguard. You have attacked a human outpost. You have taken human lives. You have made a mistake. Arsec's blood ran cold. Somewhere in the depths of the station, the ancient human, the one they had awoken, the one they had studied laughed. A deep, resonant sound that carried through the crumbling halls like a funeral dirge. Told you. He murmured, though no one was left to hear him. Then the station's core detonated, not with an explosion. With silence. Perfect. All-consuming void where light and sound ceased to exist. When it passed, the Xerion outpost was gone, and humanity's message had been delivered. Section 5e. The wake of certainty, the silence lingered like a scar across the void. Where the Xerion outpost had once orbited, a pulsing nexus of strung biostations and emerald energy webs, there remained only absence. No debris, no residual heat signatures, not even the faintest echo of the station's photosynthetic hum. Just nothingness, as if the universe itself had taken a blade and carved the structure from existence. Serwin's command vessel hovered at the edge of the devastation, its biomechanical hull shuddering, as if recoiling from the sight. The High Commander stood motionless on the bridge, his chitinous fingers curled around the organic railing, his secondary eyes pulsing with involuntary distress flares. The data streams scrolling across the bioluminescent displays told him what he already knew: total annihilation. Far not destruction, not defeat. Arsec's voice crackled through the neural comms, thin and frayed. High Commander. The energy signature. It wasn't fusion, it wasn't antimatter. I know, Serwind interrupted. He's did know. The humans had weaponized something far worse. The bridge crew moved like organisms in shock, their bioluminescence dimmed to a sickly amber. Their entire understanding of warfare, of physics, had just been appended. Xerion technology was grown, not built. Their weapons were living things, honed over millennia of symbiotic evolution. Yet humanity had reached into the dark between stars and Xyar's torn reality apart with nothing but cold, calculated fury. And they had done it without a fleet, without a grand armada, with as one ship. The transmission, Serwin said at last. His voice was steady, but the subharmonic vibrations beneath it betrayed him. Replay it. The holographic emitters pulsed, reconstructing the human commander's final words in shimmering amber light. You have made a mistake. Airsek's tendrils coiled tight against his skull. They knew, he whispered. Cess, they knew we would attack. They let us take the outpost, they let us wake us him. Cess, the ancient human. The one they had pulled from cryostasis, thinking him a relic. A curiosity. Now, the truth was undeniable. He had not been weak, he had not been helpless. He had been waiting. Xerwin's mandibles flexed. The realization settled into his thorax like a blade. Humanity had not just anticipated their aggression, they had value orchestrated it. The outpost, the prisoner, even the station's destruction, all of it, a message. A lesson, and the lesson was this. You do not understand what we are. Outside the viewport, the void yawned, endless and indifferent. Somewhere in the dark, the Terran vanguard was moving. And Serwin, for the first time in his long, proud existence, felt the creeping chill of doubt.